Sometimes I get asked for recommendations in my friend groups in, civilian life, a lot of my friends out here know that I do comics.
Tom's the comic guy.
But, they don't really watch the show. They don't really know the scope.
Are they really your friends then if they don't watch the show?
They are, man. Now, there's a lot. We're a small
community. Are my parents
here.
really my parents because they don't watch me on the internet?
I don't know. It's a good question. We can
My
ask
real
them.
parents would watch. My brother doesn't watch.
Your brother, but the thing is, they're not into comics, right? Like as heavy as we are.
Losers.
You actually told me you tried to tried to read some comics with your mom.
I did. My mom read 3 issues of Department of Truth last weekend.
You had your mom read Department of Truth?
She's all into JFK and conspiracy theory stuff, so I was like, okay, cool. You might dig this.
That could work.
But no, it lost her.
Not
She's
so
like,
much?
I don't know which way to read it. Is it sideways?
Is it sideways?
She didn't. The 2-page spreads really threw her off.
Well, sometimes I get asked, all right, I want to read a comic. Like, I'm interested. Maybe they saw an MCU movie or whatever, or they heard that Sweet Tooth was a comic originally.
Right.
It wasn't even a superhero movie that pushed them in.
The Boys is a big one, too.
Yeah, a lot of people asking about The Boys, right? So I thought about that moment when reading this next book we're going to review, because I get asked about superhero comics sometimes. And it's tough recommending superhero comics. I seldomly do that.
I actively don't recommend superhero comics.
Talk about why, because it's probably the same reason.
Because where do you begin?
It's confusing.
There's so much backstory and lore and continuity to get into. It's hard unless you have something like an Ultimate Spider-Man #1 to jump into. To start at a #1,
which is literally like one of the very few superhero books I recommend to like new individuals.
That's like a once in a lifetime kind of book. There's not a lot of other clear jumping on points like that series.
It gets confusing in comics.
Right.
Characters have such long legacies. There's only so many like characters that these creators can even bring into stories. So sometimes you see a random character. Even as a comic reader, you'll go, wait a minute, who is that again?
And we were just talking about it. Like Hulk Grand Design, like leans into that, like page after page of him just smashing villain after villain after villain. And you don't know who they are unless you're a big Hulk fan. Like I didn't know who they were.
Right. So this next book by Mark Waid is a perfect superhero book to recommend someone. And they're only on 2 issues. And we're going to talk about them right now. We have Batman, Superman, World's freaking finest. This book is outstanding. This was probably, although I love the books we read this week, I was most excited about this read.
Okay.
And I can't wait for issues 3, 4, and ongoing to happen.
I think Green Lantern is going to be in #4 or something. Green Lantern's coming up in this book very soon, and the cover has me all excited.
We have the superhero parts of comics that the average readers who are well-versed in hero stuff are going to enjoy. However, we have a clear flavor of the Silver Age that is being actively respected on every single page without the silliness that you would get in a Batman 66, for example.
Right.
Dire Straits, Superman gets injected by red kryptonite right in the chest via syringe. It is hardcore. However, every page of this feels like everything's going to be okay in the end.
It's hard to describe, but it's got a very Silver Age kind of flavor to it that works a lot here. It's written by Mark Waid with art by Dan Mora, and especially I want to point out colors by Tamra Bonvillain. I love the colors in this book.
That's the first thing. When you came over, we're like, we got to figure out the colorist of this, because in the moment I couldn't think of it, but I knew these colors.
It's weird to recognize colors, but I'm starting to learn, like Crystal Halloran, like Ice Cream Man is the first colorist I distinctively latched onto.
I can tell from a mile away like it's Mignola art, right?
Exactly. And I'm getting that way with Tamra Bonvillain. Has these like really rich, thick, like vibrant colors that just pop off the page here.
Look at this Poison Ivy. And I don't even want to get too deep into a narrative. I want to talk about...
Honestly, you don't really need to.
We don't need to.
It's like Silver Age comics in the sense that like they get into a jam and they get out of the jam. And it's like, it's not scary because at no point in the book are you like, oh man, Superman might not actually make it out of this one. Like, you know everything's going to be fine and you know it's going to work. And Batman and Superman are going to team up and come up with some sort of plan. It's about the journey and the experience. And the way I thought about it while reading it was that it's like a Silver Age story, but with modern style art, which really makes it tolerable for me because I'm not the biggest fan of the old school art.
Absolutely. No, you have a slick feeling. The comic is beautiful. And because the danger is so prevalent, You know, there are some major situations here where you are going to think, oh no, this is probably where they're going to build the entire narrative going forward on. It gets wrapped up in like a comic, in like one issue. And then they do super comic booky things. You know, they're taking you through time. They're introducing you to a new villain. They're also fixing a situation that was recently introduced pages earlier, but it doesn't matter. We are following the world's finest, Batman and Superman. This is taking place in the past, only a couple years, I think it's 3 years, into their kind of partnership that they're developing. They're realizing that, hey, if we have some issues in Metropolis or Gotham, we don't have to like stay in our respected areas. We can
help each other.
That's
kind of what's happening here. You've got Poison Ivy, a Batman villain, hanging out on the Daily Planet, like the globe in Metropolis.
So you get Batman in the daytime, going to save the day. Can we talk about Robin and how well Robin is written?
He's some really good comic relief here, but it's written in a way that's not like overly comic reliefy. It's a very hard balance, and you specifically brought up Brian Michael Bendis while we were prepping for this show, and how the dialogue here, it doesn't feel like it's trying to be comic relief. Overall, the writing in this book is a very fine balance between going too far and not going far enough. I don't know if I'm explaining that very well, but
no, it's a strange way to describe the comic because it is strange to experience as you read it.
It feels like you found some comic from 20 years ago that
was written recently.
Yeah, but that was drawn recently, but written old school. But it's such a weird mix of old and new, and it works. It works really well.
We have Metallo, who has a kryptonite heart, which you know is going to be a huge danger to Clark Kent, to Superman, takes him down, and as mentioned, whips out a freaking syringe and gets him right in the chest. It's going to be a problem, and clearly it is. This is probably going to be our thumbnail, to be honest, because this right here is hardcore. But again, you got to keep in mind, by the time you get to this moment, you're going to be hit with, oh, this is like a modern comic book. This is like modern narrative. Mark Waid's writing it. But you'll kind of forget this heavy moment up until then because you're laughing, you're in awe by the beauty, the Silver Age vibes of almost everything's going to be okay by the end of this. This is superheroes.
And I really just love the art team here. Dan Mora and Tamara Bonvillain are the artist and colorist of Once and Future, for example. They've done a lot of work together in the past, and it's my favorite part of this book and also of that book, too, of Once and Future. It's not one of my favorites, but I love the art in there, too.
Comic fam, this right here is a perfect example to be able to provide a newer reader. If you want to get them into something superhero-y without having a huge line of comics for them to catch up on, giving them a bunch of backstory, you don't need that. This right here dives into one of the coolest, funnest, just things we all know. You don't even have to be into superheroes to know about.
Everybody knows Batman and Superman. But also, I think this book taps into another market that is even harder for people to get into. I think this book works for the comic fan who does not like newer stuff.
Yes.
A lot of jaded,
Absolutely.
older comic fans are like, back in my day, everyone thinks back in my day.
The opposite effect.
Yes.
This right here, if you have somebody who's brand new and you want to give them something to just jump in at, I think this is going to be a graphic novel I'm going to be recommending to a lot of people. Probably have to keep stocked on my bookshelf to just gift to people. But on the other end, if you are, if your friend, we all have these friends, comic fam. We're in the collector space, so we're speaking honestly.
You're in the comments all the time too. We know you're out there.
Just modern books.
They don't make comics like they used to.
This right here is them making comics like they used to.
This book works, and it's worth trying if you are a stickler for older stuff.
There it is. What else? Oh, we have an introduction. We also have a really cool collaboration that takes place because, where is it? There it is. We have the Doom Patrol that they seek help from. So if you have any experience with the Doom Patrol, you know that they're really strange. The situations that they have to get out of are ones that are very comic booky. You probably won't think of, it's kind of like, oh, that's so strange and bizarre that it works. When you have Doom Patrol in your comic book, you know that you're going to be getting a lot of that, which works so well for this narrative because it's rooted in what made superhero comics so awesome back in the day. They're fun.
They're fun, and there's not a lot of other stuff that you need to know to really, even when they're bringing in the Doom Patrol, my first instinct was, oh great, I don't know anything about the Doom Patrol. I'm going to be so lost and confused. But you can see right down there at the bottom, it's like, nope, here you go. Here's a little bit about each of these guys. Just what you need to know to make it fun and to make the story kind of continue on without getting bogged down in a bunch of continuity.
I want to know what the community recommends in the comment section below. When someone wants to read superhero comics, you give them Watchmen?
No.
No.
Not at first.
Do you give them Dark Knight Returns?
Nah,
You know?
Not
Do you give them New 52 Batman? Do you give them, Ultimate Spider-Man? Like,
Yes.
I want to know your thoughts, but I think this right here may just have been added to my list of things to recommend.
This
We'll
is another
see.
one to put in that rotation, I would say.
Only 2 issues so far.
That's true.
So-
it might turn out to be the worst comic ever eventually.
It might.
But at least 2 issues in,
Solid.
it's got me.
It's got
I'm
me.
enjoying this.
It's absolutely got me.